be. And niggas trying to take my life away. I put a hole in a nigga for.
What's up, YouTube? Getting back on the LS swapped S14. Been working on it the last week or so, and I'll show you guys what I've got done so far. So if you haven't seen previous videos, this is a nice clean Zenki S14. The previous owner did a LS swap with a Colorado AR5 transmission. Bought a whole bunch of nice parts and put it together and stripped the interior to do a cage and then let it sit for a few years. He did give me all the interior for it too, which is nice. But step one was to make it run and drive nice. The biggest problem when I got it is he had bolted it in and made the transmission and engine mounts to just bolt it in and make it easy and drive as is. But the transmission needed to go up like 3 inches because the transmission was facing down and then the drive line was facing up. And when you looked under the car, the header was like pointing towards the ground. And there was no exhaust on the car. It was extremely loud. You can hear it in the last video. So that's how it was when I got it. So step one, over the weekend, a few days ago, I unbolted the front subframe and just dropped the engine and transmission out from the bottom. And the reason why I did that was so I could have it on jack stands under the car on the lift, and I could just lift the body up, clearance everything, and then set it back down. And I could do that 2 or 3 times till I got the fitment right where I wanted it. When I did have it off the first time, I did go ahead and slot the engine mounts because there was room to go about 1 inch back with the motor. So I went ahead and did that first as soon as the engine was on the ground, and then I threw the transmission mount in the garbage. So once I slotted those engine mounts, I went ahead and clearanced the transmission tunnel to get it to sit where I needed it to, and dropped it down a couple times and it worked. I also had to flip this brake line where it mounts to the frame rail because when I moved the back of the engine up and the whole engine back, it was contacting that brake line. So I relocated that. When I did that whole process, I did flop the whole wiring harness over, and I needed to do that also anyways because that was all run against the headers and stuff all over the place, and it wasn't really optimal routing. Now that I've got it in the good mounting position, I was able to re-hook up the harness and route everything away from the heat sources. And you can see I have it almost done, put back together now. Also, if you remember previous videos, the shifter was like 1.5 inches further back, but since I moved the whole transmission back with the engine, I had to shorten this to center it back into the OEM location. Like I said, this is a Colorado AR5, so it puts the shifter in a pretty funky spot. I'm hoping when I put this back in, for those 2 gauges that actually work nicely, that it'll still fit in that space without getting hit by the shifter. I also had to yank the steering column to pull it out through the header on that side so that I could do that whole process. Now I'll show you what it looks like from underneath. You can see I removed the coilover since I removed the stock strut since I do have coilovers to put on it. That way when I lowered the subframe and engine down, it wasn't connected. Obviously that's why the brake line is disconnected as well. And I also had to remove the traction braces because otherwise this would have hit on this side and the power steering pump would have hit on that side. You can see it has some nice ISR long tube headers that came with it. So I did have to cut the flange off, the 2-bolt flange, and weld these V-band flanges on. And I got 2 pipes there, joining together, full 3-inch back to a muffler. Got it all tucked pretty nice and high. And the muffler sticks out just even with the back bumper. Don't know what it sounds like yet because I'm still putting everything back together, but hopefully it sounds pretty good. But yeah, that's what it looks like now. So I know it probably doesn't sound like a lot of work, but it's been a lot of up and down and in and out and up and down and welding and cutting. It's been almost a full week that I've been working on it after hours. But right now I'm gonna shove the steering column back through and get that all bolted back in and hooked up to the rack. And then I can top off all of the fluids again and start her up and see how this exhaust sounds. It's the next day, getting back in the shop. So I got the wiring harness all hooked up. Everything's plugged in and tucked nicely. I also spent last night doing all the prep work for the VQ S14 gas tank. If you've watched previous videos, you would know I've been fighting a rust issue with this tank for, well, the whole season so far, and decided to bite the bullet and just order a 3-step sealing kit. So it comes with a cleaner solution. So you fully clean and wash the inside of the tank, which I did last night. And then there's an etching primer that you soak it in for about an hour, and it gets the surface ready to adhere to the sealer. And I did that last night, so then I let it sit overnight to fully dry, and now it's ready for the sealer, which takes about 4 days. So I'm gonna seal that here in a few minutes, but for now I'm gonna plug away at the S14 a little bit more. So this morning I went over to Shane's place and drilled out the stock 4-lug rotors to be 5-lug. And the reason why is because I have a brand new set of 5-lug wheel bearing hubs. I'm gonna go ahead and throw those on now. You can see I've got the new traction rods up front and the coilovers up front and the rotors off. So I gotta take this hub off, swap it for the 5-lug, and then I can put the rotor back on and the caliper back on. When I'm done with the front, I'll move on to the rear. So I need to swap the suspension out for the coilovers. I disconnected the camber and tow arms so I can swap those out, and I took the rotor off. So once I'm done with the front, I will loosen the traction arm so that way the hub can fall forward and loosen, and then the axle will pull out a little bit from the back and make it easier to get to the 4 bolts in the back that hold the rear hub on. Then I can swap these hubs for the 5-lug, put it all back together with the coilovers and the new arms. You can see I got the front 5-lug swapped. And now the back is 5-lug swapped. The only problem I ran into was the left side rear, not this side, the other side. The caliper was frozen and I couldn't compress it. It wouldn't move at all. So instead of buying a new caliper, I went upstairs and looked through my parts piles, and I did have the rear calipers off of the VQ car because I did Z32 all the way around on that one. So I went ahead and swapped that caliper onto the left rear of this LS S14. Only problem with doing that is that the e-brake cable is a little different, so you can either swap out the e-brake cable or just delete it. This car didn't come with a factory handbrake anyways, so my plan was to put a inline hydro setup in it and mount it where the factory handbrake goes, just like I did in my VQ S13. So that'll eliminate the need for any of the e-brake cables anyways. Now that I've got these all done, I can bleed the brakes and put some 5-lug wheels on it. But I also need to swap out the rear arms and the rear struts for coilovers. And then I can go ahead and unbolt the factory e-brake cables that came from the caliper and went over to the driveline because I'm not going to need those anymore. Yeah, plugging away. All right, I got the rear 5-lug done. Got the camber and tow arms in the back done, and the coilovers. Jessica just came out and helped me bleed all the brakes all the way around and bleed the clutch. And luckily there was enough room in the transmission tunnel to get a tool in there to crack the bleeder loose. So pretty glad with how all that turned out. And only full set of matching wheels I have right now are the R34 Skyline GTT wheels and the factory lug nuts. So I need to order a set of wheels for this and a set of spline drive lug nuts. But for now, I'm gonna use these wheels, get the ride height kind of in a area where it's drivable, and the alignment, eyeball that out and measure it up so it's, you know, drivable on the street, so I can finally test drive this thing. So, and put the hood on. All right, I got the S14 down on the ground with the GTT wheels and should be ready to drive. The test drive went pretty good, but when I got back, I noticed that the left rear caliper was pissing all over the ground. It needs a new left rear caliper. The one I swapped on from upstairs is this leaking one. I don't know why I wouldn't have just thrown that away, but regardless, so now I need to decide if I want to source another one, or since I am going to be installing an inline hydro, if I want to go ahead and just throw Z32 calipers on. Probably should do it anyways. The car does have an LS motor, and if myself or somebody decides to track it, it will be nice to have some brand new Z32 calipers on it. But yeah, so it's up in the air for two reasons. So I could take that wheel off and inspect the leaky caliper, but also because I need to mount the battery. This car came with a nice Optima battery and a nice aluminum battery tray. If it was steel, I'd probably just weld it in where I wanted it and then just bolt it down to that. But since it is aluminum, I went ahead and drilled 4 holes right up against this back panel, and I cut out 2 pieces of metal to go across long ways and drilled holes in them and painted them black. So those 2 pieces will go underneath the car and spread the load across a 2.5-inch piece of steel on the front and back of the battery. So it's not just going to be 4 bolts, because you might rip the bolt heads through the sheet metal of the car. So this will be nice and sturdy and a good solution. Next on the list is going to be to finish the interior wiring. This is all how the car came, but you got the main battery cable from the back going to this junction, and then the battery going to the front, and then these 2 wires going to the ECU and some other stuff. So it does have 2 mounting tabs, so I do need to mount that, and I also need to mount the relays, and I also need to mount the ECU. Once I mount all this stuff, then I can actually start putting interior back in. Also, the 2 gauge pod center trim does fit with the shifter. I do need to just cut a little bit more inside the plastic or put an angle on the top of the shifter right here. There is about 2.5 inches of steel on the shifter extension, so I could just notch it right there, and then it won't hit. Once I get that done, the next thing to do will be to build a cap for the tranny tunnel because there is a gaping hole in it right now. But yeah, more stuff to do, but at least it's coming together, and everything that's done on it now is more of a permanent solution. So I'm almost done working through the existing stuff. Like I said, this stuff was already like this when I got the car. So once I get all this mounted and the battery mounted, then all the existing stuff will be done. And I can start actually making progress on new stuff. But that's where it's at. I also did have time a couple hours ago to do the sealer in the tank. It's got to sit for 4 days now. And I spent about 2 hours turning it every 5 or 10 minutes, different angles, letting it sit. So that way it completely coated the inside of the tank. So I have it sitting like this right now. So that way any excess stuff will kind of drip out, and then I can keep wiping it down every half an hour or so it doesn't dry in the sealing surface for the fuel pump. But yeah, making progress. This will be 4 days, so I can't put this back in until Monday. Probably just do it on Tuesday to be safe. All right, I'm gonna give you the drill.
What?
Here, just try to tighten it. Oh, you need the battery too.
How does this steer supposed to go in? Smokey, this is your size.
Hey, Smokey.
Here you go.
Tight? Yeah. Thank you.
Here.
Let me put it back in its box. All right, Reese helped me bolt that down. Yeah, I got a couple plates down there. Should be nice and sturdy. Well, that escalated kind of quickly. I figured since I need a new left rear caliper, and I also needed to figure out the hydro situation, I went ahead and ordered the pull-up inline hydro setup like I have in the VQ hatch, and order all the Z32 calipers from Part Shop Max, all new rotors from the local AutoZone, and the ISR brake line adapters for all 4 corners. So that's going to be sitting on jack stands till next week when all that stuff shows up and I can do the brake swap and the hydro install. And then I don't have to worry about it. All the brakes will be new and fresh. Hydro will be done. Like always, like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more content, and I'll see you next time. Peace.